You ever get told you're lazy while scrubbing a toilet that someone else clogged? No? Then you've never been married to Mark. It started with one sentence. One ridiculous, venom-laced sentence that I can't unhear no matter how hard I try. You don't deserve rest until you earn it. Said by a man who once sprained his ankle trying to pick up a pizza box. But let's rewind. Because if you're here, you're probably just as curious as I was, about how a marriage built on love, dinners for two, and Netflix turned into a boot camp for one. And trust me, you'll want to stay until the end. You'll want to hear how his boss reacted when I let him read our texts. Yes. Those texts. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment below where in the world you're watching from. Now grab a drink. You're going to need it. Mark and I met 6 years ago. He was charming, attentive, and had the kind of laugh that made you feel like the joke was always worth telling. Fast forward to our 3rd anniversary, and he'd stopped laughing. Actually, he'd stopped talking, unless it was to give me a chore or complain about how I folded his shirts wrong. I had just left my job as a nurse due to burnout. Long shifts, screaming patients, hospital budget cuts. I needed a break. A real one. Mark agreed, at first. He even told me to take the time I needed. That lasted maybe 2 weeks. One morning, I was standing in the kitchen, drinking my 3rd cup of coffee, eyes barely open, when he walked in wearing his ironed shirt, ironed by me, and looked me up and down. You didn't even unload the dishwasher? No good morning. No kiss. Just that. I blinked. I will. I just haven't. He cut me off. You don't deserve rest until you earn it. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was unreal. He didn't blink. Just grabbed his briefcase and walked out. That's when it started. Every day became a performance. A checklist. Dishes. Vacuum. Bathroom. Laundry. Groceries. Dinner. Repeat. He left me lists. Actual printed lists. With boxes next to them for check marks. Oh, it's just until you get back on your feet, he'd say. Or, you have to contribute somehow. Rest isn't free. Let me pause and say. We were financially fine. He had a high-paying job in finance. And I had spent years supporting his dreams while working night shifts and keeping us afloat when his crypto obsession went south. But I played along. For a while. Until one day, I noticed something odd. He left his phone on the counter. Unlocked. Now, I'm not someone who snoops. But something about the way he had been so performative lately, like he wanted me to feel small, made me curious. And oh boy. It started with a thread to his coworker, Dennis. Mark. She just lays around all day. Drinks coffee. Watches Netflix. Acts like she's on vacation. Dennis. Dude. You married a nurse. Not a houseplant. Mark. She hasn't earned a single thing. I should send her a bill for the electricity. That one hit me. A bill. For living. But wait, it got better. He had an entire group chat. Mark. Dennis. Caleb. And Mr. Lanter. Yes. His boss. Why would his boss be in a group chat like that? Because, apparently, they were planning a team bonding weekend and discussing whether or not to include spouses. Mark said. Mine's dead weight. I might bring her just so she can clean up after us. No joke. He typed that. And his boss laughed. That was the moment. That exact moment. When I knew. I had a plan. But first, I needed evidence. I started archiving screenshots. Hundreds of them. His lists. His nasty remarks. His cruel jokes. I even recorded a few of our conversations on my phone while cleaning. Just in case. And then came the final straw. It was a Friday night. He came home at 9 p.m., drunk from happy hour. I had made dinner. Roasted chicken. Homemade mashed potatoes. Salad. The works. He walked in, stared at it, and said, "You think this makes up for being useless all day?" I didn't respond. Not out loud. But inside, something snapped. I was done. I excused myself from the table. Went to the bedroom. And that night, while he snored like a cartoon walrus, I was on my laptop, finalizing the email. Subject line. Regarding employee conduct, Mark Harlan. Attached. Screenshots of the texts. The jokes. The voice recordings. And one final note. I thought your company valued respect. Let me know if that's changed. I signed it anonymously. But used my real return email. Because I wanted them to know it came from me. The next morning, Mark was whistling while brushing his teeth. He had no idea his boss was reading the part where he called him a micromanaging man-baby with a coffee addiction. But oh. He'd find out. Very. Very soon. You ever watch someone check their phone and visibly lose every drop of blood in their face? Because I did. And it was beautiful. Mark had just taken his first sip of coffee Saturday morning when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Then again. Then again. He went pale. Like ghost of his own bad decisions pale. Now, I wasn't watching him directly, I was wiping down the counter, casually, humming to myself, but I could feel the panic radiating off his shoulders like heat off a frying pan. "Everything okay?" I asked, not looking up. He didn't answer. Just walked out of the kitchen and into his office, phone glued to his hand. I gave it 10 minutes. Then followed. He was pacing. Muttering. And clutching his forehead like it was about to explode. I leaned against the doorway. "Bad news from work?" He looked up, startled. Like he'd forgotten I existed. Then nodded stiffly. "Something got forwarded to HR." "Oh?" I tilted my head, trying not to grin. He cleared his throat. Someone sent screenshots from a private group chat. Apparently, they think it's misconduct. Oh, that's awful. I crossed my arms. Was it serious? He looked at me then. Really looked. And for the first time in a long time, I saw it. Fear. They included conversations with my boss, Anna. Pause. They're investigating. Another pause. Someone also sent in voice recordings. That was when he sat down. Like the weight of all his smugness had suddenly turned into lead. Now, here's the thing. Mark wasn't just a guy with a job. He was a guy obsessed with status. He loved the company. Wore the logo hoodie around the house like a badge of honor. Posted LinkedIn updates every 2 weeks. Tagged the CEO in comments. Even referred to his office as his war room. So knowing his little kingdom was crumbling? That was better than therapy. I stayed quiet. Let the silence stretch. Then, in the calmest voice I could muster, I said, "Mark. If someone did all that, maybe it's because they felt disrespected." He looked up sharply. "You think this is about you?" Bingo. I mean, I shrugged, you did say I didn't deserve rest. That I was dead weight. That you'd bring me to a retreat to clean up after you guys. And let's not forget the part where you called your boss a micromanaging man-baby. His mouth dropped open. I gave him a soft, sweet smile. You forgot your phone unlocked, Mark. He stood up so fast his chair screeched. You went through my phone? You left it open. I went through what was already open. I didn't even need to dig. He stared at me, speechless. And I I walked away. By Monday, things escalated. Mark didn't go to work. He called in sick, which, for someone who mocked me for needing rest, was poetic. He barely spoke to me. Which was fine. Because every time his phone buzzed, I watched him flinch. Then came the call. Speakerphone. From his boss. I just happened to be in the next room, folding laundry. Mark, we're conducting a formal inquiry. What you said about your wife and your team was wildly inappropriate. Especially considering your public role. Mark stammered. It was all meant as jokes. Just private stuff. Private or not, you insulted coworkers, including me, and mocked your wife repeatedly. She has grounds for defamation, and frankly, so do I. The call ended with, "We'll be in touch. You might want to contact legal." I folded the last towel with a little extra flair. That night, Mark tried to turn it around. He came in with that fake soft tone he used whenever he wanted something. "Anna, maybe we got off on the wrong foot this week." I blinked. This week? Mark, you've been using me like a maid for 8 months. He held his hands up. Okay. I've been stressed. But we're a team, right? We can fix this. I crossed my arms. No, Mark. We were a team. Until you decided I had to earn basic human decency. Then I pulled out the folder I'd prepared. A nice little stack of printed screenshots. His words. His voice. His jokes. Everything. And if you're wondering what else I shared with your company, I said, sliding it across the table, it's all in here. You can keep it. He didn't even touch it. Just sat down. Quiet for once. The next week was a blur. He was suspended from work pending investigation. The group chat was leaked internally. His funny remarks? Not so funny anymore. I received an anonymous email from someone in the HR department. They thanked me. Said it opened a conversation about how women are spoken about in male-dominated spaces. And that they'd be reviewing their culture policies. The cherry on top? Mr. Lanter, his boss, stepped down to reevaluate personal values. I didn't even have to say a word. But I wasn't done. Mark still had the audacity to act like I'd ruined his life. You exposed me. He yelled one night. I worked so hard to get to where I am. I looked him dead in the eyes. And I worked so hard to hold you together while you burned me out. So welcome to the ashes, Mark. And that's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to live like this anymore. So I did one final thing. I contacted a lawyer. Not for a lawsuit. Not even for money. But for the divorce. When I told Mark I wanted a divorce, he didn't say a word. He just stood there, blinking. Like the word had never been said to him before. Like he couldn't be left. Then he sat down and laughed. You're not serious. I didn't blink. I'm not asking permission. That wiped the grin off his face. See, I'd spent months breaking under the weight of his demands, his chore lists, his constant reminders that I was only worth the work I produced. And now? I was flipping the script. The lawyer's office was crisp, clean, and air-conditioned. Unlike our house, which was currently filled with the stench of Mark's anxiety and self-pity. I want a clean break, I told the attorney. No drama. No fighting. Just my freedom. He looked over the paperwork I had brought. Screenshots. Voice memos. Copies of those little honey-do lists with his passive-aggressive notes scribbled in the margins. After a few minutes of quiet reviewing, he looked up and said, "Well, he's not going to fight you on this. Especially not if he wants to avoid more public embarrassment." Exactly what I'd hoped. Mark's company was still unraveling. Turns out, the group chat went beyond bad jokes. Other employees started coming forward. Apparently, my husband had a pattern of speaking about women, colleagues, clients, and yes, me, like they were obstacles instead of people. 3 resignations. 2 formal HR complaints. 1 pending lawsuit. And a lovely little email that showed up in my inbox. It was from a woman named Rachel. She was a junior associate in Mark's department. Here's what she wrote. Hi Anna. I know we've never met, but I just wanted to say thank you. What you exposed gave a lot of us the courage to speak up. I've worked under Mark for 2 years, and it was hell. We weren't lazy or incompetent, we were just women with opinions. Thank you for showing us we weren't crazy. I cried. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in a long time I felt seen. At home, Mark was spiraling. He'd been formally terminated, not just for the texts, but for a pattern of behavior uncovered during the investigation. The severance package he was banking on? Gone. He came into the living room holding a bottle of wine and said, "Maybe we can just take some time. Rebuild." I laughed. Out loud. "You told me rest wasn't free," I said, tilting my head. "Well, now you know what not resting costs. And it's expensive." Then I packed my bags. Here's where it gets even better. Remember that bonding weekend Mark was so desperate to attend? The one where he said he might bring me along just so I could clean up after the guys? I went. Alone. Turns out, one of the executives, not involved in the group chat, reached out to me. She'd heard what happened. Wanted to know if I'd be willing to speak on a panel about workplace sexism, burnout, and invisible labor in relationships. At first, I hesitated. But then I remembered every single night I cried into a pile of laundry while Mark played video games and shouted, "I work all day. What's your excuse?" So I went. I walked into that retreat in a clean white blazer, hair done, confident, calm, and I saw 3 of Mark's former colleagues nearly choke on their drinks. "Anna," one of them stammered. I smiled. "Oh, I'm not here to clean. I'm here to speak." The panel was cathartic. I told my story. Told them how invisible I felt. How my marriage turned into a job I never applied for. How the man who once held my hand through night shifts eventually turned me into his personal maid. And I ended with this. Rest isn't something you earn by suffering. It's something you deserve because you're human. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise, not your boss, not your spouse, and definitely not some insecure finance bro with a superiority complex. The applause was real. And the healing? Even more so. Mark tried to contact me several times after that. Texts. Emails. Even a handwritten letter. He said he'd lost everything. That he made a mistake. That I ruined him. But here's the thing. I didn't ruin him. He handed me the matches. I just chose to stop putting out the fire. A few months later, I was living in a bright, peaceful apartment with 0 chore lists on the fridge. I went back to school, not to return to nursing, but to study counseling. Burnout recovery, specifically. Turns out, you can turn pain into purpose when you finally give yourself permission to rest. One night, I received a voicemail from a blocked number. It was short. Just 7 words. "You really think you're better than me?" I laughed. Because yes. Yes, I did. Thanks for watching. If you made it to the end, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments, what would you say if someone told you to earn your rest? And remember, you don't need permission to rest. But if someone tries to take it from you, you absolutely have permission to take everything else back.